So with that, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We'll go ahead and go with our lesson here. We're going to be talking about the Shema again. This is one that we're going to be dealing with for quite some time. We're breaking it down. This is one that I get a lot of questions about. This is just people because when you bring up the book of Mark and you're going through what Yeshua said was the greatest commandment, and it's the Shema. And so there's got to be something to the Shema. And I think it's overlooked a lot. Putting things out on YouTube is really helping with people viewing this. We have a lot of people who are viewing this online that I've been kind of in conversation with emails and stuff. I haven't met some of them. They're enjoying the services. They're enjoying the lessons. They're understanding a little bit more of what we do. Like I said, the name of it that I was going to go with was the series was the Shema and the weird things we do, but we didn't go that route. I just wanted to just call it Shema. We'll just call it the Shema. When we're looking in this, and then, like I said, this is part 4. I don't know how many parts we're going to do, but it's getting there. I'm enjoying it though. It's a good series. Hear, O Israel, and we said O was just more of like an emphasis. It was more of like the exclamation part, but exclamation point. It says, Hear Israel, Adonai our God, Adonai is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. And we talked about that last week. We did kingdom talk. The next part of the Shema that goes into is and you are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your resources. These words which I am ordering you today are to be on your heart, and you are to teach them carefully to your children. You are to talk about them when you sit at home, when you travel on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them to your hand as a sign and put them on the front of a headband around your forehead, and write them on the doorframes of your house and on your gates. This is the part we're looking at today. And you are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your resources. Another translation, the Tree of Life version, says, Love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. What this is saying, there's many different translations of how they say it, but what it in essence is saying is, with everything about you, love God. All right? And I'm going to talk a little bit. I've been to, and this it's sad. Some are good, some are sad. But if you've ever been to a funeral, go to a funeral, and it can be rough. Some of them are joyous, some of them are not. All right? But I go to a lot of funerals, and I've actually taught some of the funerals. I spoke at some. But some funerals that I've went to, they come up to you and they say, he really loved the Lord. And they'll say that. It's just like out of the blue, he just really loved the Lord. And sometimes when I'm talking with these people, they just want to come to me and tell me that, he just really loved the Lord. And I'm like, is that a statement or is that a question? I mean, it kind of comes at me as like, are you trying to sell it to me? Because, if you got to sell me if he really loved the Lord, then, I'm like, maybe, I don't know how you got to sell it sometimes. And I've been to some, and it's sad because they try to sell it. And I'm like, okay, just let me know. It's like, it kind of seems more like a question more than a statement. And one of the things they said, a lot of people say, he was at church all the time. He was at church every day on Sunday. He was always there. And I was like, yeah, some people need to hear this, but the devil's there too. All right? The devil's there too every Sunday. But they say he was at church all the time. And some people, they go to church to worship. Some people go to church to be worshiped. I had to say that. I didn't want to say that, but I had to say it. Some people go to worship, but then some people go to be worshiped. And I've been around that environment. But one of the worst responses you can give somebody that I actually think I will start doing at funerals. I know it is, but when people say, he really loved the Lord, I'll be like, okay, how so? And I know that sounds rough, but it's a reality. And I want to ask that question because I would like to ask people while they're still here, because I want that to be resonated. If I'm at your funeral or you're at my funeral and somebody says, he really loved the Lord, I want somebody to say, how so? How so? I want to know how you decide if this person really loved the Lord or not. I was at one funeral one time and they said, they talked about his church attendance was brought up at the funeral. Church attendance brought up at the funeral. And don't get me wrong. All right, I tell you guys this. I love seeing you guys here. I really do. But do not use that garbage at a funeral. Do not bring up church attendance at a funeral. That is garbage, all right? Jerry's not here. He loves the Lord. Chase isn't here. He loves the Lord. Zach and Amy's not here. They love the Lord, all right? It is not a participation award. It is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. It is not a participation award. If you are not here, that is just fine. That is fine. And that doesn't exclude you from the body of Christ. A lot of times if you're running late, if something's going on, you're running late, and you had to stop, and you're helping somebody out, don't pass up an opportunity to help somebody because you had to get here, okay? If you have to take care of somebody, take care of the people. That's the importance. I'm going to miss you. Don't get me wrong. I love seeing you guys here, but attendance is not a participation award, all right? It's the way we refill our tanks to get back and do the work of God through the week, you know? It's not just a compartmentalized faith. And that's what I want to get into, is a compartmentalized faith. If you say, well, this is it on Shabbat, or this is it on Sunday, or this is how my faith works on a Wednesday night. Well, okay, but outside of that, you have other things. But you know how your faith operates inside compartmentalization, and that's what it's not about. So, and that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit today. All right? So in Daniel, I'm going to bring this up. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, we talked about this, I think it was last week, and we were talking about the moon and about how the moon faded out. That was Jehoiakim, the last king of Judah. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, this is Babylon, came to Jerusalem and laid siege to it. Now, a lot of people go, okay, yeah, he came and he took over Babylon. Babylon came over and took over Jerusalem. This was right at the temple falling and the city being captured, and he took all the things out of the temple and brought them back to his own storehouses. What people don't understand is that he laid siege to Jerusalem. The process of that is you have to understand, if anybody had any problem with Israel or Jerusalem, any time in the Bible, we see that God said, go send your troops out and I'm going to meet you on the battlefield. They didn't have a chance to get there. God met them on the battlefield. He says, go out, I'll handle this for you. I will fight for you. But for them to say, should we go out to the battlefield? No, God's not going to meet us there. God was like, they're coming for you, and I'm not being on the battlefield for you. This place is falling. So to lay siege on Jerusalem is a big thing. To go out to a battle and lose is one, but to go out to the battle and not go out there because they're coming to you, but you're like, there's no point to go out there. You didn't even put up a fight. He just walked in and said, I'm laying siege to this. It was attacked. So Adonai handed Jehoiakim, king of Judah, over to him. Handed him over. Along with some of the articles from the house of God, he took them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the articles in the storehouse of his God. That phrase there, like when I hear that, it churns my stomach a little bit, because if you understand that these were not things, these are holy items. These were not things that somebody just goes, hey, I bought something on Amazon. You know, I got some really cool, pretty things. These were things that if they weren't done right, those people were punished for not building these things properly. These are holy things. And for the other people just to take them and to store those things amongst other things in another storage for another false god, it's just, can you imagine just being the warehouse keeper that's standing there looking at these things going, well, we got some more stuff from another god. It just doesn't sit right, you know? Those are some important things. These are things that the holy things that were sitting in the temple, we're talking during the time of Solomon, building these things and erecting these things and putting these things together and assembling them, and then years down the road, they're just, another king just threw them in a storehouse. It's sickening. But the king ordered Asphaz, which is the eunuch, serving as the chief officer, to bring in the palace from the people of Israel, coming of royal noble descent. They were to be boys without physical defect, handsome in appearance, versed in all kinds of wisdom, and quick to learn, discerning and having the capacity to serve in the king's palace. And he was to teach them the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. So they were going to learn a different language. But he selected some really good ones. And these were going to be some boys that he was going to bring up. And if you know how things go, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I was talking to my daughters about war and how things happen in northern Sudan and places in Africa. When other tribes go to war with other tribes, they actually just go in and they kill the mothers and they steal the children. And the children are raised by them, not knowing their own parents, but they're raised to be soldiers in their own army. So that is literally how that is becoming. They steal their own soldiers at a young age. And that's kind of what we see going on here. The king assigned them a daily portion of his own food and the wine he drank, and they were to be cared for in this way for 3 years. At the end of this time, they were to become the king's attendants. All right. But among these, from the people of Judah, were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officer gave them other names. This is what people get at. They'll say, oh yeah, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. They named them after other gods of their culture because they wanted to give their gods, they wanted to honor them by giving them the other gods' names. This was not their names. This was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So these are the original Hebrew names or the Jewish names of these young men. This world is good at trying to take away your identity. And many today have what Rod actually shared with me too. We actually agree very much on this, is there is an identity crisis that's kind of going on. People want to identify as something. They have to identify as something. And then they want to know what you identify as. What are you? What are you Christian? Are you a Jew? Or what, they throw these kind of things out. And what are you? And I tell them I'm Scott. I'm just Scott. And somebody actually told me once this, and this is actually quite funny. They said, when it comes to your name, technically, when somebody asks you, what is your name? They're actually asking you, what sound do you want me to make to get your attention? In all actuality, that's what they're doing. What sound do you want me to make that gets your attention? That's what your name will be. But to many, especially to God, as biblical, names have a meaning. And these guys' names meant something. All right? But I want to look at Daniel for just a second here on uncompromising lifestyle that he had, a continuous relationship with God. This was his prayer life, and humbled himself by giving God the glory. This was a young man who we don't see people like this in our times, but when we do, it's remarkable. So we look at Daniel and it says, but Daniel's resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or the wine he drank. So he asked the chief officer to be excluded from defiling himself. God caused the chief officer to be kind and sympathetic towards Daniel. However, the chief officer said to Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king. After all, he is giving you an allowance of food and drink. So if you were to see you boys looking worse than the others your age, you would be putting my own head in danger from the king. He was like, I would love to help you out, but this is going to cause me some problems because you guys are going to look kind of weak. Then Daniel said to the guard, whom the chief officer had put in charge of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please try and experiment on your servants. For 10 days have them give us only vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then see how we look, and compare us with how the boys who eat the king's food look, and deal with your servants according to what you see. He agreed to do what they had asked and gave them a 10-day test. So he tested them out for 10 days. It goes on to say, at the end of the 10 days, they looked better and more robust than all the boys who were eating the king's food. So the guard took away their food and the wine that they were supposed to drink, and he gave them the vegetables. So this was the uncompromising lifestyle, because to these 4 boys, God had given knowledge and skill in every aspect of learning and wisdom. Moreover, Daniel could understand all kinds of visions and dreams. And I want you to understand this because people will teach on this. God gave them great gifts, not because they deserved it. It's not because they deserved it. It's because he was going to receive the glory because of it. He's like, I can use these guys. These guys will show glory back to me. I can use them for my own glory. That's what God did, to be used by God. It wasn't because they did such great, wonderful things that he says, I'm just going to give them some really cool gifts. Now they're superheroes. No, he gave it to them because he says, through them I will be glorified. That's how that happens. And they weren't thinking, if I do good, he's going to give me great things. They were just doing good things. And God says, that's a heart that I can use. So it goes on to say about his prayer life. On learning of the document that had been signed, there was a document signed that says you cannot pray to other gods. You cannot ask anything for your own favor from another god. You can't communicate with other gods. It only can be done through the king. It can only be done through the certain gods that they have. They signed a decree. They were using that to trap Daniel. Daniel went home. The windows of his upstairs room were opened in the direction of Jerusalem. And there he kneeled down 3 times a day and prayed, giving thanks before his God. And this is what I want you to understand out of this, just as he had been doing before. You see, he did not just pray in hard times, he prayed in all times. He didn't pray in hard times, he prayed in all times. He did not compartmentalize his faith. He didn't put it in the boxes. He didn't say, well, this is the way I live here. I have my prayer life over here. This is Sunday morning over here, Shabbat over here, Friday night here, Wednesday afternoons here. He says, no, this is it every day, 3 times a day. I do this. I'm not changing. They wrote a decree. Okay, but this is my way of life. This is it. I don't compromise. It's a continuous relationship. It wasn't something with hard times going, oh no, how am I going to get through this decree? No, I just continue living my life. I have a relationship with God. So, like the stone you saw, now this is going into humbling himself. Like the stone you saw, he was given visions and dreams. Nebuchadnezzar came to him and was like, hey, I got some dream that's keeping me up at night. I don't know what this means. And somebody can solve this for me. So, Daniel pops on the scene. He says, just like the stone you saw, which without human hands separated itself from the mountain and broke to a piece of iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. He's describing the dream. But he says, the great God has revealed to the king what will come about in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is reliable. He spoke facts on that. He didn't say, I think this is what this means. He didn't say, well, I know what this means. This is true. It is reliable. And he's basically like, can I go back to bed now? Like, seriously, okay, I solved that for you. But he came with authority speaking to him, but he humbled himself and saying, God gave me these gifts. It's not me doing this. And King Nebuchadnezzar fell to his face and worshiped Daniel. He ordered that the grain offering and the incense be offered unto him. To Daniel the king said, your God is indeed the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, since you have been able to reveal this secret. He humbled himself and saying, this isn't me telling you, this is the vision that my God is telling you. Now with that, I want to look at Luke. Someone who is trustworthy in the small matter is also trustworthy in the large ones. And someone who is dishonest in the small matter is also dishonest in the large ones. So let's look at what happened. The king promoted Daniel to a high rank, gave him many riches, gifts, and made him governor of the entire province of Babel. This is Babylon. And head of all the sages of Babel. I'm going to repeat that. He became the head of all the sages in Babylon. At Daniel's request, the king put Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah in charge of affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the attendance of the king. I want to share this verse a little bit more in depth with you guys. We're looking at a map here, all right? So we see Jerusalem right here on the left, and then you see Babylon right here, and you see Persia right here. This is how the maps kind of was, but if you look at it, Persia is modern day Iran. All right, Babylon is modern day Iraq. The Assyrians came in, took the northern half of Israel. All right, when Israel split, we had King Saul, King David, King Solomon, and then King Solomon's son Rehoboam divided the nation because of like a civil war. They fought amongst themselves. So you had the northern half of Israel, lower half of Judah. The northern half got taken over by the Assyrians. The Assyrians did not take the lower half of Judah. But then the Babylonians came in later and they took all of it. So the Assyrians fell to the Babylonians. The Babylonians was the Babylonian Empire. Then later on, the Babylonian Empire fell to the Persian, the Medo-Persians. So you had the Medo-Persian Empire. And that's where you see like the book of Esther at. This is also the book of Daniel. Daniel got to see that it became Babylon. He actually saw that it became Persia. He was there around those time frames. But if we look, Jerusalem's there on the left. Babylon, right there on the right. It's east. And then we have Persia right there. This is the area where Daniel was at. He got moved from Jerusalem, went up through here, and down to Babylon. That's where he was at. But every morning when he prayed, he faced Jerusalem. He knew that it wasn't over. I made that comment the other week. Why would he pray to a city that's been torn down and the temple destroyed? Because he knows God wasn't done with it. He knows. He got visions and dreams. He knows. He knows it's not over with. I'm going to pray to that. I know my God's still active. He's doing stuff here. He could see it. But Babylon is the east, and Daniel was to be over all the sages in Babylon. Babylon finally became Persia when they took over. This is the book of Esther. And then they returned to Israel during the book of Esther. Here's a fun fact. Not all Jews returned to Israel during that time frame. They were comfortable. Persia was a good place. Israel was tore up. They didn't have a temple. They didn't have a wall. A lot of them were like, no, I'm good here. I built a life here. I was raised here. I might as well just be Persian. So not all returned. So the book of Esther. So some stayed in Persia because it was nice there. But all the sages in Persia studied under their teacher, Daniel. They studied under teacher Daniel. And then they passed their teachings on to their students. So Daniel was over all the sages. After Yeshua was born in Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, during the time when Herod was the king, Magi, these sages from the east, came to Jerusalem. And they asked, "Where is the newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star in the east, and we have come to worship him." How did those sages and those Magi, how did they know from the east? How did they know that the Torah and the Messiah was coming? How do they know that? Glory be to God. Glory be to God on that one. Yeah, I had to learn it from somebody, right? So Daniel didn't compartmentalize his faith, and he lived his faith and compartmentalized his life according to his faith. God was glorified through the life of Daniel. A lot of people don't understand those sages. They had to learn it from somewhere, and they came. As a matter of fact, some of them were probably Jewish because they stayed back and they studied, and they were studying Torah over there. And how do they know about all this? Because they studied. They studied and they studied and they passed on their studyings. In the book of James, actually before we read on James, here's a fun fact of James. If you look and you see the spelling of it in Greek, James, the book of James is actually, who wrote the book of James? You say James, but what was his Hebrew name? Yaakov, yeah. So it's Jacob. So through linguistics and stuff and canceling out letters here and there, it came to be more of a James type style. But it's Jacob. Jacob, his name was Israel. What was Jesus' other brother's name? Judah. Isn't it just crazy to think that Jesus, Yeshua, shared a womb with Israel and Judah? Just fun facts there. That he actually shared a womb with Israel and Judah. He says, "Don't deceive yourselves by only hearing what the word says, but do it. For whoever hears the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror, who looks at himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what he looks like. But if a person looks closely into the perfect Torah, which gives freedom and continues, becoming not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work it requires. Then he will be blessed in what he does. Now look at chapter 4. What is causing all the quarrels and the fights among you? Isn't it your desires battling inside you? You desire things and don't have them. He says you kill and you are jealous and you still can't get them. So you fight and quarrel. The reasons you don't have is that you don't pray. Or you pray and you don't receive because you pray with the wrong motive. That is of wanting to indulge your own desires. He was just spitting truth there. And it says here, you kill and you are jealous and you can't get them. So one people you think is he just sitting here talking to a bunch of murderers because you just kill all the time. But what I want you to look is the actual heart of killing, all right? And if we look at the Psalms, we just read some of this in the Psalms. How precious, God, is your grace. People take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the rich bounty of your house, and you have them drink from the streams of your delight. For with you is the fountain of life, and your light we see light. What he's saying is this fountain of life that he's talking about here. God is a giver of life. He gives life, but yet through our lifestyle, we smother people. We don't speak life into people. We backstab people. If there's a way to get over on somebody else that will benefit me, I can take a chance to do that. A lot of people call it the corporate ladder. They climb this stuff. It doesn't matter how many people they have to pull off the ladder to get there. You're not giving life. You're squashing people. You're creating death. What God is bringing to life, you are trying to smother. And that's the essence of what you are doing is you're killing. And then when it says it's a fountain, that's an endless supply. It's a never-ending fountain of life. He gives, we receive. He gives, we receive. And we have nothing that he needs. Some people forget that. But there is nothing we have that he needs. All right? And there's a lot of Calvinistic views. And people know where I sit on the Calvinistic views. I'm not with it. I have a lot of people and they say, people that they believe that they're elect. And I've answered this one time. They said, what do you think about this? Heaven is going to be heaven with or without you. All right? That is the God's honest truth about it. Heaven's going to be the same with or without you, and he doesn't need you to keep the place running. All right? If you're not there, it's still going to be operational. Okay? He's going to be just fine without you. If I tell him that, he's going to be just fine without you up there, believe me. It's more of a benefit for you than it is for him. All right? Let's just put it that way. All right? You need him more than he needs you, and God has no room for pride. He doesn't have any room for pride. And they'll say, Scott, I believe this and this and this. And Scott doesn't care. Scott didn't ask you what you believed or what you thought about that. That's why Scott didn't ask. But it was never about you. It was just never about you to begin with. This whole thing was never about you. It was always about him. And people say, well, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. It wasn't about you. When did you think that was about you? You know? They say, well, what about this? Who's Israel? What's this and this and this? It's about him. It's about redemption. It's about him using people and showing examples. They say, what makes Israel so special? It's not the fact that they're so special, the Jewish people are so special, he took a people that is like almost extinct and making an example to show the whole world how his redemption can come about. All right? They say, well, look at the church, it's outgrowing in numbers. Okay, that's great. He wouldn't want to use that. Why? Because, well, if you come to glory and everything's just great and wonderful going through that, you can just say, well, it wasn't God, it was just us. And it goes back to being about you. So he uses the remnant. He uses the small. All right? He doesn't use the proud that walk around saying, well, I got timeshare in heaven. It ain't like that. It's not about that at all. So it brings it back to a full circle because let's look at James or Yaakov in chapter 4. So you fight and quarrel, and the reason you don't have is that you don't pray, or you pray and you don't receive because you pray with the wrong motives. That of wanting to indulge your own desires. If it benefits you, you'll find it. You'll go to a church that just benefits what you want it to hear, what you want it to say. You know, if I preached things on, hey, you name it and claim it, you're going to have a jet or something, you're going to, you know, all this stuff. People, oh, it's great. You know, I'm going to tell you it's going to be hard. You gotta suck it up and get tough, and we got to go through this together. Nobody wants to hear that, but it's the truth. It is the truth. So when people pray, they have themselves in mind, and they have their own desires in mind. I have to watch out for that myself. I have to. I get caught up into it just as much as anybody else will. I'm not saying I'm special, that I've got something. I'm up here teaching to myself, because when I pray and I'm asking God for something, when it's something, and I'll actually call Jerry, I'll call Chase, I've called some of you guys, and I'm like, hey, I just need to make sure that what I'm praying for is not selfish. I want to make sure that what I'm praying for is actually going to benefit God, that this is what God does. I'm a servant. I am a servant of God. And He gives us a job. You are a servant of God. He gave you a job to do. He gave something you to do in real life here. Not to say, well, this is what I do on Shabbat. He gives you assignments to do throughout your whole life. And as a servant, as an employee of God, you go to Him, you say, God, look, this is my job. But if you can give me this to make that job easier, whether it be a better camera, and then we come to find out we could use it for yeshiva classes. We can use it for other purposes. God, could we get this? God says, I will give these things to you. That way it will better the kingdom, because you can make your job easier. It's like me being at work and be like, can I get some safety glasses? Can I get some sharper blades on my tools? And your boss is like, yeah, you probably do need those kind of things to make your job better. If I go to the employer and say, hey, can we have a pizza party? He's like, like, we could do that, but we ain't doing it all the time, kind of thing, you know. But you can get some good requests. Sometimes he's like, yeah, you know what? It's cool. You know, it's a relationship thing. But the moment I go there and say, hey, can you name off ridiculous stuff that has nothing to do with what he asked you to do, and it's just going to benefit you, what do you think your employer is going to say? No, that's not even in the budget. You know, it really ain't. Like, what are you doing coming and asking me these dumb things? And God's the same way. He gives us assignments. And when you pray, you want to pray, and you want to see it the way God sees things. And this is going off on something here, but the way that Jacob, not James here, but Yaakov, when they had the ladder, and he had the dream, and he saw the angels up and down, you go up the ladder, that's the basis of our prayer systems. And people don't realize this, but the basis of Judaism's prayer is to start off with the Psalms. And what you're doing, you're ascending. You make aliyah. You take yourself and you bring yourself before God. You go up, make aliyah before God, and you lift Him up in praise and worship. And then when you stand before God, now you're actually in the presence of God. Now you have the relationship in your prayer. And then you have to descend. You have to go back into the world that you came out of before prayer. And then you look around and you go, this is the chaotic world that I live in. This is the chaotic world that I even helped make it chaotic. I had a part in this. But you have to enter back into this world. And that's our prayer life. You cry out to God, you're before God, and then you got to get out of prayer, and then you go, okay, here it is. You know, that's why it's praying without ceasing. You're just up and down the ladder all day. But that's the basis of it. And when we have the Shema, they're taught as children. We teach them as children. When you cover your eyes in prayer, it's to, when you say Shema, Shema Israel, you cover your eyes, you close it, you're bringing yourself before God. And then when you remove your hand from your face, you're looking at the chaotic world. You're back and going, whoa, where did I go for a little bit? I had that time with God, but now I'm back here and I have an assignment to do. It's chaotic. And that's what we got to do. We kind of have to bring the heaven down here. We have to say, all right, we got to be that light to the world. But when you pray, do you have yourself in mind, or do you have the desires of what God is? The desires that you say, God, my prayer is to see things the way that you see them. That my desires become your desires, or that your desires become my desires, and that they should be one and the same. You don't say, God, you don't see it my way. He's like, I don't want to. Why would I? Your way's garbage. He goes, look at it my way. That's what God's saying. Look at it my way. How about you just take a break and just see how I see things? And sometimes when he shows you things and lets you see things the way he sees them, it hurts a little bit. And you go through things. And it hurts, but you grow through it. And in John it says this, it says, in addition, the Father who sent me has himself testify on my behalf. But you have never heard his voice or seen his shape. Moreover, his word does not stay in you because you do not trust the one he sent. And he's speaking of himself. And she was talking about, I am the one that the Father sent. You keep examining the Tanakh because you think that in it you have eternal life. Those very scriptures bear witness to me. But you won't come to me in order to have life. Those very scriptures bear witness to me. I took a screenshot of what the Shema is. You see Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. For anybody taking any Hebrew classes, this was one of the words right here, Echad. And then right here, the very beginning of it, Shema. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And if you notice in the Torah, how it's written, there's no vowel markings, but the ayins right here in the first part of the Shema, it's large. It's written large. Do we know why it is? No, it's just always been written large. There's these little key factors through there. And then the dalet at the end is also enlarged. And it's written like that in every Torah scroll. But they're enlarged. So those are the two letters that are enlarged. Does anybody know what this word is if you put those two together? That's the Hebrew word for witness, ed. Ed just means witness in Hebrew. I'm going to back up. Those very scriptures bear witness to me, but you won't come to me in order to have life. Bear witness to me. That is, everything you do or say, do in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks through him to God the Father. And I'm going to end on this quote here. Frederick Bachner, he's an author, but he has some really good quotes out there. The final secret, I think, is this, that the words, you shall love the Lord your God, become in the end less a command than a promise. We do it out of obedience, but I think it's more of a promise when he says, you shall love me. You'll get there. Redemption's going to happen. You will love me. It's more of a promise than a command. And I like the way that was worded. That is the Shema. That's part 4. You shall love your God. So we'll go ahead, we'll stand for singing and prayer and blessings. So, and it is said, the Lord shall be king over all the world, and on that day the Lord will be one, and his name one. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu Hiye Adonai echad Ushemo echad. God, we lift you up today because you are our God, and you are not just our God on Shabbat. You are not just our God whenever we just have a Bible study. You are our God through our entire life. Our faith is not compartmentalized. You are what our life is about. So through our lives, from the moment we came to know you, to our final breath that we even going to take, That's what we strive for. Not to be just something here on a Shabbat and to be stagnant and to just say, well, this is just kind of my hobby. You're not a hobby. And God, you are our God. You're our living God. We worship you. We praise you for the things that you do. And we worship you for who you are. Thank you very much for the Mashiach, your son, Yeshua, that makes this possible, that makes redemption possible. Thank you for the promises that you're giving us. And it's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine on you and show you his favor. May Adonai look upon you and give you peace. Yevareka Adonai ve'ishmerecha. Yoat Adonai panovaleka ve'huneaha. Esa Adonai panovelecha ve'asim leha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, everybody.